So picture a highly efficient factory or, even just a productive office space.
Right.
You are probably picturing a beehive, right? Everyone is buzzing around. Nobody is standing still. Every machine is running. Every single worker is actively doing something.
Exactly, because we have this really deep-seated belief that being busy equals being efficient.
Yeah, exactly. But, well, what if the buzzing is actually the problem?
Yeah.
What if keeping everyone working at a solid 100% capacity is actively destroying your company?
It's a crazy thought.
It is. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tearing down our basic assumptions about productivity. We're looking at honestly, a pretty dense, but frankly, revolutionary academic paper from 1980.
Yeah, written by Dr. Eli Goldratt.
Right. He was a physicist, actually, who stepped into the manufacturing industry and just completely upended how we think about efficiency. He introduced this concept called the Optimized Production Timetable, or OPT.
And, while the sources we're unpacking today dive really deep into factory scheduling, it's really a masterclass in how we completely misunderstand how work actually gets done.
Totally. By the end of this deep dive, we're going to prove exactly why assuming that, busy equals efficient is just dead wrong.
It is a massive philosophical shift. To really grasp the magnitude of what Goldratt was proposing, you have to understand the environment back in 1980.
Right. What was the standard back then?
Well, companies were struggling with these incredibly chaotic, unpredictable production lines. And to fix this, Goldratt introduced OPT, which, on the surface at least, was a multivariate mathematical computer program.
Just a piece of software.
Right, but the software itself was really merely a Trojan horse for the mindset shift he was demanding.
Wow.
He was basically telling management that their foundational ways of analyzing, forecasting, and, valuing work were mathematically flawed.
Okay, so to understand why his approach was so shocking, we first need to look at what every other manager was doing at the time.
Right.
The traditional starting point for running a factory was something called the economic batch quantity. The EBQ.
Yes, the EBQ.
This was like the golden rule of efficiency.
Oh, absolutely. The traditional goal for any factory is pretty straightforward, right? Minimize the manufacturing costs per individual part.
Sure, makes sense.
And to do that using the EBQ, a manager tries to strike this mathematical balance between two competing financial realities.
Okay, what are those?
On one side, you have labor costs. So setting up a complex machine to make a specific part, it takes time and it takes highly skilled labor.
Right.
If you make a massive batch of parts all at once, you only have to set up that machine once. You save on that setup labor.
Okay, let's unpack this because I like to use analogies. Let's talk about my kitchen. If I'm baking cookies, it makes total sense to bake a massive batch of, say, 100 cookies all at once, so I only have to wash the messy mixing bowl one time. I save my own labor. That's just common sense.
It is, but EBQ balances that against a second reality, which is storage and interest costs.
Oh, right. Because if it's just, two people in my house and I bake 100 cookies, 98 of them are going to sit in a jar, go stale, and eventually just get thrown out.
Right, so you wasted ingredients.
Yeah. So EBQ is supposed to be that perfect mathematical middle ground, right?
Yeah.
The exact batch size where I minimize washing the bowl, but also don't waste ingredients.
That's the theory.
It sounds perfectly logical. So why is EBQ a problem?
Because of a hidden, highly damaging assumption that's buried deep inside that common sense logic.
Okay, what's the assumption?
Goldratt points out that the entire EBQ calculation assumes that the setup time you save, like the time you save by not washing that mixing bowl over and over, will actually be used productively for something else.
Oh, I see. Because if I wash the bowl less often and I have absolutely no other baking to do today, I haven't really saved time in a way that produces more food.
Exactly.
I'm just standing around my kitchen doing nothing.
And that is the fatal flaw. In a real manufacturing plant, with hundreds of different machines and drastically different processing speeds, that assumption falls apart completely.
Right.
You might save an hour of setup time on a really fast machine by running a massive batch. But if that machine didn't have another job lined up anyway, you just optimized an illusion.
Wow, you optimized an illusion.
Yeah. This realization that saving setup time isn't automatically beneficial forces us to look at where that saved time actually goes. And to do that, Goldratt categorized every work center in a plant into one of two distinct groups, type X and type Y.
Okay, let's define those because this seems like the core of his whole theory.
It really is.
So type X resources are the bottlenecks. Out of the whole factory, they take the longest time to process their share of the work.
Right.
And then every other resource in the entire plant, whether it's a person or a machine, is a type Y, a non-bottleneck.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yes. Once you divide the world into bottlenecks and non-bottlenecks, you can map out the flow dynamics between them to see exactly why the old EBQ model fails.
Okay.
Goldratt outlined 3 basic scenarios. First, imagine parts flowing from an X machine to a Y machine.
Okay, so we're moving from the slow bottleneck to the fast non-bottleneck.
Right. In that scenario, X is churning away, working at 100% of its capacity. But Y is starved for work.
Because it's faster.
Because Y is significantly faster. It might only be utilized, say, 80% of the time. The rest of the time, the operator is just standing there waiting for X to hand over the next part.
Okay, that makes complete sense. So what happens if we reverse the flow? Scenario 2. Parts flow from the fast Y machine to the slow X machine.
Well, if you let Y work at 100% capacity because, management says everyone must be busy at all times, Y is going to process parts much faster than X can handle them.
Oh, man. So unfinished parts just pile up in front of X.
Exactly. They become excess work in process, or WIP. Y's effective, useful contribution to the final product is still only 80%.
Right.
Anything it produces beyond that just sits there in a massive pile collecting dust.
Which brings us to the third scenario, right? A shared assembly. This is where X and Y are making separate parts that eventually bolted together at a final station.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you're listening to this on your commute right now, visualize a massive 4-lane highway. That's our fast Type Y resource.
Good analogy.
Now, picture all 4 of those lanes merging into a single narrow lane. That single lane is our X bottleneck.
Right.
If you tell all the cars in the 4 Y lanes to drive faster, it does not get anyone home any quicker. It just creates a much worse traffic jam right at the merge point.
Because every single car still has to wait for that one slow lane to let them through.
Exactly.
And that highway traffic jam is exactly what happens on a factory floor. If Y works at 100% capacity, it just creates a massive pileup of components right before the final assembly, because X is still holding up its half of the final product.
Yeah.
So look at the pattern. In every single scenario, X can and should work at 100% capacity, but Y mathematically must be restricted.
Wait, I want to make sure this really lands for the listener. Is Goldratt saying that having workers or, multi-million-dollar machines sitting completely idle doing absolutely nothing is actually a good thing?
Yes. It is a mathematical necessity.
That is wild.
This is the radical shift that upsets so many managers. Goldratt proved that non-bottleneck resources, the Y machines, must have unusable idle time.
Wow.
Therefore, going back to our EBQ problem, trying to save setup time on a Y machine by running huge batches is totally useless. It does not increase the plant's overall production.
It just shifts the idle time around or creates massive piles of unfinished inventory.
Exactly. Only the X machines, the bottlenecks, actually need large batches to save setup time, because an hour lost on a bottleneck is an hour lost for the entire plant.
Okay, so if only bottlenecks need large batches, human nature is going to kick in, right? A manager looks at the floor and says, well, determining which machine is X and which is Y is really complicated. Let's just run huge batches everywhere all the time just to be safe, keep everyone busy.
Oh, yeah. They did that a lot.
Right, so if they do that, what actually happens to the business?
It causes a catastrophic financial chain reaction.
A financial one.
Yeah. And to understand the mechanics of that disaster, we have to look at what Goldratt calls the beta-alpha rule. This is where the physical reality of the factory floor slams into the accounting department.
Okay, let's unpack the beta-alpha rule, because this math explains why being too busy literally bankrupts companies.
We need to define 2 variables for a basket of raw materials entering the plant.
Okay.
Beta is the total cycle time for that basket to go from raw metal to a finished product.
Got it.
Alpha is the specific amount of time the bottleneck takes to process its step for that exact same basket. Now, to keep your factory from stalling, you must release a new basket of raw materials onto the floor every time the bottleneck finishes one.
Right, so you release a basket every alpha.
Exactly. The problem arises when we calculate the total work in process, all the half-finished parts floating around the entire factory at any given moment. That total equals the ratio of beta divided by alpha multiplied by your basket size. Now, why should you care about this equation?
Yeah, why?
Because work in process isn't just physical clutter. In the financial world, those half-finished parts represent your working capital.
Huh?
They are liquid assets.
Oh, man. because you bought the raw materials. You paid the workers to do the first few steps.
Yes.
So that is cold, hard cash trapped in a metal bracket sitting in a plastic bin.
Precisely. When management runs huge batch sizes everywhere just to keep workers busy, the basket size in that equation balloons. Your cash gets trapped in mountains of half-finished parts piled up in front of the bottleneck.
Right.
Your marginal return on investment just tanks. You could literally be a highly profitable business on paper, but go bankrupt because all your actual operating cash is tied up in traffic jams on the factory floor.
That's insane. You are cash poor because your Y machines were too efficient.
Right.
And the systemic misunderstanding gets even worse when factories try to decide what jobs to prioritize, doesn't it?
Oh, it gets so much worse.
Walk us through Goldratt's priority paradox, because this completely blew my mind when I read it.
The priority paradox shows how traditional logic actively delays production.
Okay.
Imagine you have two products to build, part A and part B. They both eventually have to pass through the same bottleneck, machine X.
Got it.
Part A takes a total of 25 units of time to finish its entire journey. Part B takes 21 units of time.
Okay, so traditional management logic looks at that and says, start part A first. It takes 25 units instead of 21. It has a longer lead time, so get it out of the way early.
Right. But Goldratt argues you cannot make that decision without looking at the shared capacity constraint, machine X.
Okay.
Let's break down the specific routing. Part A needs 20 units of time on the slow machine X, and then 5 units on a fast machine.
20 plus 5 is 25.
Yep. Now, Part B needs only 6 units of time on machine X, and then 15 units on a fast machine.
Okay, so if we follow the traditional logic and start part A first, machine X is entirely tied up for 20 units of time.
Yeah.
Part B, which needs that same machine, cannot even start until time unit 20.
Right.
And once it finally gets on the machine, it takes its own 21 units of total time to finish. So 20 plus 21.
Yeah.
The whole assembly of both parts isn't done until time unit 41.
Exactly. Now run the numbers in reverse. Start Part B first.
Okay.
It only needs machine X for 6 units of time. That means Part A, the longer job, only has to wait 6 units before it can start.
Right.
Once it starts, it takes its 25 units to finish. 6 plus 25. The whole assembly is done in 31 time units.
Wow. By factoring in the shared bottleneck instead of just the total time, we finished the exact same amount of work in 31 units instead of 41.
Yes.
That is nearly a 25% increase in speed utilizing the exact same machines and the exact same workers just by changing the sequence.
It's incredible, right? It proves that ignoring the bottleneck constraint warps every single decision you make. When management uses the old EBQ method to size batches and traditional priority scheduling to sequence them, the floor just descends into absolute chaos.
Because parts aren't ready when they should be.
Exactly. Final assembly is constantly waiting, and this chaos inevitably gives birth to Goldratt's ultimate real-world proof that the system is broken.
Oh, yes. The expediter.
The expedite.
Anyone who has worked in manufacturing or really any complex logistics knows the expediter. To put this in everyday terms, the expediter is like that person at the airport whose flight leaves in exactly 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, we've all seen them.
They're sprinting through the terminal, frantically cutting to the front of the security line. They're pleading. They are shoving past everyone. And yes, they make their flight, but they force the entire airport security system to halt, reset its priorities, and delay everyone else in the process.
The factory expediter does the exact same thing. Their entire job is to hunt down sorely needed, critically late parts that are preventing final assembly from shipping a product.
Right.
And where do they usually find those missing parts?
Let me guess. Buried at the bottom of a massive queue of work in process in front of a bottleneck machine.
Because a fast Y machine dumped a huge batch on the slow X machine days ago.
Right. So the expediter, in an absolute panic, forces the operator of that critical bottleneck machine to stop what they are doing.
Yes.
They have to tear down their current setup, retool the entire machine for the vital missing parts, run that tiny emergency batch, and then set the machine up all over again to get back to the job they were just interrupted on.
They literally forced 2 extra, completely unproductive setups on the single most critical constrained machine in the entire plant.
Wow.
They are stealing time from the one place that dictates the speed of the whole factory.
So expediters are basically the walking symptom of a broken fixed batch system.
Absolutely. They prove that the reality of the floor demands flexible batches, even if management refuses to plan for them.
So I guess the multi-million-dollar question is, how does Goldratt actually fix the system? How do we build a schedule that doesn't rely on panic, chaos, and expediters sprinting around the factory?
Well, step one is throwing the whole concept of a single batch in the trash.
Okay, what do we replace it with?
Goldratt proposes splitting the concept of a batch into 3 distinct types.
Okay.
First, the process batch. That represents how many parts a specific station works on continuously before changing setups.
All right.
Second, the transfer batch. That is how many parts are physically moved to the next station at one time.
Right.
And third, the control batch, which is really just how the paperwork is grouped for management tracking.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
If I'm a worker on the floor doing the actual labor, a batch is a batch. How can it be 2 different sizes at the exact same time?
Okay, picture a classic car assembly line. A worker is assigned to install steering wheels. From their perspective, the batch they are processing is infinite. They never change tasks. They don't stop installing steering wheels to suddenly go paint doors.
Right, the cars just keep coming.
So their process batch is infinity. But the car itself, once the steering wheel is on, that single car moves down the line to the next station. It doesn't wait for 99 other cars to get their steering wheels finished first.
Ooh.
So the transfer batch is just one.
Ah, I see. The worker sees a massive process batch, so they aren't losing any setup time at all, but the system moves the product in tiny transfer batches, which keeps the work flowing smoothly without massive piles of inventory.
Exactly. It unlocks incredible flexibility, but a manager cannot just guess at these batch sizes.
Right, because if transfer batches are too small, you have workers spending all day carrying single bolts across the factory floor.
Right, which is its own kind of inefficiency.
Yeah.
So Goldratt outlines 4 specific managerial parameters used to paint what he calls the mosaic of the factory schedule.
Okay, so if we don't want workers acting like ants carrying single crumbs, how do we set the rules? What are these 4 parameters?
We use the first parameter, MMT, or minimum machine time. This dictates your transfer batches based on how much control you want to exert.
Okay, how so?
If a manager sets the MMT to, say, 240 minutes, they are dictating that a batch of parts moving to the next station must contain at least half a day's worth of work. It prevents the chaos of micromanaging worker reassignments every 10 minutes. A smaller MMT yields faster financial benefits like less WIP, but it makes the floor much harder to control.
So MMT sets the rhythm of the floor.
Exactly.
But wait, what if a machine breaks down? If we are running this incredibly tight, optimized rhythm, doesn't the schedule just shatter the second something goes wrong?
Well, that introduces the second parameter, DS, or desired stock.
Desired stock.
Yeah, this is a safety buffer multiplier. If you know a specific machine constantly jams, or maybe a raw material supplier is consistently late, you set a high DS for that specific area.
Oh, to ensure the subsequent stations always have a buffer of parts to work on.
Precisely.
Okay, so we have our rhythm with MMT and our buffer with DS. But earlier, we talked about those fast Y machines. If we hand a half day's worth of parts to a super fast machine, won't it just chew through them in 20 minutes and then sit idle, causing wild fluctuations in the cycle time?
That is exactly what would happen. To solve that, Goldratt uses the third parameter, FLOW.
FLOW.
MMT alone would indeed cause traffic jams in front of really fast operations. The FLOW parameter intervenes and automatically trims those large transfer batches down right before they hit the fast machines.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, smoothing out the flow so parts don't surge and then stall.
Okay, so what stops a zealous manager from just dumping all the raw materials onto the floor on day 1 just to make sure everyone looks busy?
The final parameter, MBL, maximum batch limitation.
Okay.
It acts as a fail-safe applied at the very initial stages of production. It legally prevents the factory from releasing massive quantities of parts way too early.
Oh, strictly controlling the working capital and preventing that trapped cash scenario we discussed earlier.
Exactly.
Man, okay. So we have dismantled the old EBQ, identified our X bottlenecks, and designed this mathematically beautiful, perfectly optimized schedule using these 4 parameters.
You did.
But I mean, the real world is messy. Workers get sick, power goes out, shipments are delayed. How does a single disrupted worker not just bring this entire delicate mosaic crashing down?
Judging a schedule's robustness is the final piece of the puzzle. Yes, the schedule must show firm financial benefits, throughput going up, work in process going down, the bottleneck running at full capacity.
Right.
And it must reflect actual physical constraints on the floor, like ensuring the specific custom fixtures required for a machine are actually available, not just the machine itself.
That makes sense.
But its most vital feature, really, is its immunity to disruption.
Disruptions are guaranteed. So how do we build an immune system for a factory?
Goldratt explains that when chaos strikes, it spreads in two directions, horizontally and vertically.
Okay, think of this like knocking over a complex setup of dominoes, where the line splits into two distinct paths. One little mistake on a single domino, and the chaos travels down both paths simultaneously.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. Horizontal spread is the worker's domino path.
The worker's path.
Right. If a worker is delayed on their current task at 9 a.m., every subsequent task they are scheduled to do for the rest of the day is now pushed back.
Oh, wow. Right.
Vertical spread is the part's domino path. If a specific metal bracket is delayed, the next worker down the assembly line who desperately needs that bracket is now delayed. Every disturbance creates a tidal wave.
So how do we stop the dominoes from falling?
To stop horizontal propagation, the worker's day, you intentionally space out the idle times between jobs. You do not schedule non-bottleneck workers tightly back to back.
Oh, which we can do because we already mathematically proved that non-bottleneck Y workers must have idle time anyway.
Exactly.
So we just place that idle time strategically as a shock absorber.
Exactly. You build in safety time. To stop vertical propagation, the part's journey, you don't schedule a part for its next operation the exact second it finishes the previous one.
That makes a lot of sense.
But the ultimate defense, the true genius of OPT, is the precise placement of strategic safety stocks.
Okay, where do we put the buffers to ensure the system survives?
You place a pile of safety stock directly in front of the X-type bottlenecks.
Okay.
And you place another pile right before final assembly, specifically for parts that have already passed through the bottleneck.
Oh, that isolates the chaos perfectly.
It really does.
Because if a fast Y machine breaks down early in the process, the bottleneck doesn't even notice. It just keeps eating from its safety stock buffer. The heartbeat of the plant never skips a beat.
All right.
And if a machine breaks down after the bottleneck, final assembly doesn't stop because it has its own safety stock of bottleneck process parts ready to go.
The only thing that can truly bring the plant to a halt is a breakdown of the bottleneck itself. Everything else is absorbed by the system.
That is just brilliant. To pull all of this together, Goldratt's 1980 paper wasn't just about selling a piece of software to managers.
Not at all.
It was a radical, necessary shift from trying to optimize the individual pieces of a system to optimizing the system as a whole. It proved mathematically that trying to keep everyone busy 100% of the time is actually a recipe for financial disaster.
It fundamentally redefines what efficiency means. And, it leaves us with a fascinating parallel to consider in our own lives.
Oh.
How so? If we apply the same logic to our personal productivity, we all have a bottleneck in our day. Usually it's deep, focused, cognitive work, the big projects that actually move the needle on our careers or our goals.
Oh, wow. Our personal type X resource.
Exactly.
But how often do we rush to efficiently clear out easy tasks like answering emails or doing basic administrative chores just so we can feel productive and busy?
All the time.
Are we really just creating a mental traffic jam of work in process?
Yeah.
We optimize our inboxes, which are type Y resources, while our personal bottleneck, the deep, important work, sits completely idle and starved for attention.
We exhaust ourselves optimizing the non-bottlenecks, and at the end of the day, the important assembly never gets finished.
Wow. Are you optimizing your emails while your personal bottleneck is starved for attention? That is a wild thought to leave on. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today. Look at your own daily schedules this week through the lens of X and Y resources. Remember, the goal isn't to be buzzing all the time. Sometimes standing in the kitchen doing nothing is exactly what the system needs.